The stolen transport ship screamed through the atmosphere of Haven's edge like a dying animal. Mira Kim gripped the controls with shaking hands as warning lights flashed red across the damaged console. Behind her, 8-year-old Day whimpered, softly, strapped into his seat with tears streaming down his face. "Hold on, little star," Mira whispered, her voice barely audible over the howling wind and failing engines. "Just a little longer." The ship bucked violently as it hit another pocket of turbulence. Through the cracked view screen, Mira could see the storm raging across the planet's surface. Lightning split the dark sky while rain hammered against the hull. This was not the gentle landing she had hoped for, but it would have to do. The hegemony ships were only hours behind them. With a grinding crash that shook her bones, the transport hit the ground and skidded across muddy terrain. Sparks flew from broken circuits as the ship carved a deep furrow in the earth before finally coming to rest against a cluster of tall trees. Silence fell except for the steady drumming of rain on metal. Mira unbuckled herself with trembling fingers and turned to check on Day. The boy's dark eyes were wide with fear, but he seemed unhurt. His mixed heritage showed clearly in his features, human eyes and nose, but with the slightly pointed ears and silver-touched hair of her own people. "Are we safe now, Mama?" Day asked in his small voice. Mira's heart broke a little. They had been running for so long that her son barely remembered what safety felt like. "I don't know, little star, but we're alive, and that's what matters." She gathered their few belongings, a small bag of clothes, what little food remained, and the precious identity documents she had forged. Everything else had been lost when they fled their last hiding place 3 systems ago. The ship's door hissed open, letting in the cold, wet air. Mira pulled Day close and stepped out into the storm. The rain soaked through their thin clothes. Within seconds, she looked around desperately, searching for any sign of shelter. In the distance, she could see a few scattered lights through the trees. Buildings, maybe a town. It was their only hope. "Come on, Day, we need to walk." The boy took her hand without complaint, though she could feel him shivering. They had walked no more than 100 meters when Mira stumbled and fell to her knees in the mud. Pain shot through her left side where a piece of the ship's hull had cut her during the crash. Blood seeped through her torn shirt. "Mama!" Day cried, kneeling beside her. Mira tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't support her. The injury was worse than she had thought. Black spots danced at the edges of her vision. After weeks of running with little food or rest, her body had finally reached its limit. "I'm sorry, little star," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." That was when the light appeared through the trees. At first, Mira thought it might be hegemony soldiers, tracking them. She pulled Day closer, ready to hide or run despite her injuries. But the light moved slowly, sweeping back and forth like someone searching for something. A human figure emerged from between the trees, wearing a heavy raincoat and carrying a bright lantern. He was young, maybe 30 years old, with kind eyes, and concern written across his face. When he saw them huddled in the mud, he immediately rushed over. "Are you hurt?" he asked, kneeling beside them. His voice was gentle, without the harsh accent of hegemony officials. Mira stared at him in confusion. She had expected questions about who they were, where they came from, what they were doing on his planet. Instead, this stranger seemed only worried about their welfare. "My mother is bleeding," Day said in his careful practiced standard speech. The human looked at Mira's wound and frowned. "That needs attention. Come on, let me help you up. My place isn't far." He slipped one arm under Mira's shoulders and helped her to her feet. She was surprised by his strength and by how carefully he supported her weight. When Day stumbled on the uneven ground, the man scooped the boy up with his free arm as if it was the most natural thing in the world. "What's your name?" he asked, Day as they walked. "Day," the boy replied shyly. "I'm Jai." "Nice to meet you, Day." He looked at Mira. And you? Mira, she said quietly, still expecting a trap. Well, Mira and Day, you picked a terrible night to be out in this weather, but don't worry, we'll get you warm and dry. They walked through the trees until they reached a small building with warm light glowing in the windows. A sign by the door read, Jai's Place, Coffee and Food. It was a simple cafe, the kind of place Mira had only seen in human entertainment broadcasts. Jai helped them inside and immediately began fussing over their condition. He brought thick towels for them to dry off and guided Mira to a comfortable chair near a heating unit. The warmth felt like a blessing after so many cold nights on transport ships. Let me look at that cut, he said, examining her wound with gentle hands. It's not too deep, but it needs cleaning. I've got a medical kit in the back. While he went to get supplies, Mira looked around the cafe in wonder. It was cozy and clean, with simple furniture and the smell of coffee and fresh bread in the air. Pictures on the walls showed smiling humans enjoying meals together. Everything spoke of comfort and normalcy. Things she had almost forgotten existed. Day had found a small toy spaceship on one of the tables and was turning it over in his hands with fascination. You can play with that if you want, Jai said as he returned with bandages and antiseptic. It belongs to my nephew, but he won't mind sharing. He cleaned and bandaged Mira's wound with practiced efficiency, then went to make tea. The simple kindness of it all made her want to cry. When was the last time someone had cared for her without wanting something in return? Are you refugees? Jai asked as he served the hot tea. Mira tensed, ready to lie or run. But something in his tone made her pause. There was no judgment in the question, only gentle curiosity. Something like that, she said carefully. Jai nodded and didn't push for more details. Instead, he brought Day a cup of warm milk and a slice of sweet bread. The boy's eyes lit up at the treat. Thank you, Day whispered. You're welcome, little guy. As Mira watched her son eat with genuine hunger for the first time in weeks, she felt something she had not experienced in years. Hope. Maybe, just maybe, they had finally found somewhere safe. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside Jai's cafe they were warm and protected. For now, that was enough. Mira woke to the smell of fresh bread and the sound of gentle humming. For a moment, she forgot where she was and reached instinctively for Day. Panic shot through her until she saw her son sleeping peacefully on a small cot nearby, covered with a soft blanket. The events of the previous night came flooding back. The crash, the storm, the human named Jai, who had helped them without asking questions. She was lying on a comfortable sofa in the back room of his cafe, and morning sunlight was streaming through clean windows. Good morning, Jai said softly, from the doorway. He carried a tray with steaming coffee and what looked like breakfast. How are you feeling? Mira sat up carefully, testing her injured side. The pain was still there, but much better than before. I'm better. Thank you. Good. I brought you some food. You both need to eat. He set the tray on a small table, and Mira stared at it in disbelief. There were fresh eggs, warm bread with butter, sliced fruit, and coffee that smelled better than anything she had tasted in months. It was more food than they usually saw in a week. This is too much, she said quietly. We can't pay for this. Jai looked confused. Pay? You're hurt and hungry. Of course I'm going to feed you. The simple way he said it, as if helping strangers was the most natural thing in the world, made Mira's chest tight with emotion. In her experience, nothing came free. There was always a price, always an expectation. Day stirred and opened his eyes. When he saw the food, his face lit up with wonder. Is this all for us? He asked. Every bit, Jai said with a smile. But first, let's get you both cleaned up properly. He showed them to a small washroom where they could bathe and change into clean clothes he had found somewhere. The hot water felt like luxury against Mira's skin. When they emerged, refreshed and wearing clothes that actually fit, Jai had the food waiting. Day ate with the desperate hunger of a child who had been too often hungry. Mira tried to eat slowly, but the food was so good that she found herself finishing everything on her plate. "Better?" Jai asked. "Much better," Mira admitted. "But why are you doing this? You don't know us. We could be dangerous." Jai considered this seriously. "Are you dangerous?" "No," Mira said quickly. "Then that's settled." He turned to Day. "Want to help me in the kitchen today? I could use an assistant." Day looked at his mother with hopeful eyes. Mira nodded, and the boy practically bounced with excitement. For the next hour, Mira watched through the kitchen doorway as Jai patiently taught her son simple tasks. He showed Day how to measure flour, how to knead dough, and how to use the machine that made steamed milk for coffee drinks. "The secret," Jai explained as he demonstrated the steamer, "is to heat the milk just enough. Too hot and it tastes burned. Too cool and it won't foam properly." Day listened with intense concentration, as if learning to make steamed milk was the most important skill in the universe. When he managed to create a perfect cup of foamy milk on his third try, his grin was bright enough to light the room. "Mama, look what I made!" he called out proudly. Mira felt tears prick her eyes. When was the last time she had seen her son so happy and carefree? On their home world, before everything went wrong, perhaps. But that felt like a lifetime ago. Around midday, other humans began arriving at the cafe. Mira tensed, ready to hide or run, but Jai simply introduced her and Day as friends who were staying for a while. The customers accepted this without question, greeting them with friendly nods and warm smiles. An elderly woman named Mrs. Chen brought Day a small wooden toy and ruffled his hair affectionately. A young man named Taro, who looked similar enough to Jai to be family, brought them fresh clothes that would fit better. A teenage girl named Hana sat with Mira and made casual conversation about the weather and local news. None of them asked where Mira and Day had come from or why they were there. They simply accepted their presence as natural and right. Late in the afternoon, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a medical bag arrived. Jai introduced her as Dr. Hana Lee. "I heard. We had some new arrivals who might need medical attention," she said warmly. Mira's muscles tensed. Doctors meant questions, records, official reports, but Dr. Lee simply asked to examine Mira's wound and check Day's general health. Her examination was thorough but gentle. She cleaned and rebandaged Mira's cut with expert care, then listened to Day's heart and looked in his throat and ears. "Everything looks good," she announced. "The wound is healing nicely, and this young man is healthy as a horse, though you could both use some more regular meals and better sleep." "What do we owe you?" Mira asked hesitantly. Dr. Lee looked genuinely puzzled. "Owe me? For what? Taking care of people is what doctors do." She packed up her bag and headed for the door, then paused and turned back. "If you need anything, anything at all, just ask. That's what neighbors are for." After she left, Mira sat in stunned silence. In her world, medical care was expensive and carefully rationed. Doctors worked for profit, not compassion. Yet this human woman had examined them both, provided professional care, and refused any payment as if it was completely normal. "I don't understand," Mira said to Jai as they cleaned up the cafe that evening. "Why is everyone being so kind to us? What do you want in return?" Jai stopped wiping down tables and looked at her seriously. "What do we want? Nothing. You needed help, so we helped. That's what people do." "Not where I come from," Mira said quietly. "Well, you're here now," Jai said simply. "And here, people take care of each other." That night, as Day slept peacefully on his cot, Mira lay awake thinking about the day. Every human she had met had shown them kindness without expecting anything back. They had shared food, clothes, medical care, and friendship freely. She thought about the hegemony officials who had hunted them across 3-star systems. They valued efficiency, order, and control above all else. Kindness was seen as weakness, compassion as foolishness. But these humans operated by completely different rules. They seemed to believe that helping others was not just right, but necessary. That caring for strangers was what made them human. For the first time since fleeing their homeworld, Mira allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, they had found somewhere they could stay. Somewhere they could build a life instead of just surviving day to day. As sleep finally claimed her, she could hear Jai moving quietly in the kitchen, preparing for the next day. The sounds were peaceful, domestic, safe. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, she was sure. But tonight, they were. Warm, fed, and protected by people who asked for nothing more than the chance to help. It was more than she had dared to dream of. 3 weeks had passed since the crash, and Mira was beginning to believe they might actually be safe. Day had started attending the local school with the other children, and Mira helped Jai in the cafe during the day. The work was simple but satisfying, serving food, cleaning tables, and listening to the gentle chatter of regular customers. She was wiping down the counter when the door chimed, and a tall woman in official-looking clothes walked in. Mira's blood turned to ice. The woman wore the crisp uniform of a colonial administrator, and her sharp eyes swept the cafe with practiced efficiency. "Good morning, Jai," the woman said pleasantly. "The usual?" "Coming right up, Yuki," Jai replied, seeming completely relaxed. "Mira, this is Administrator Yuki Sato. She runs most of the official business around here. Yuki, meet Mira. She's been helping me out." Yuki's gaze settled on Mira, and for a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or suspicion. Mira's hands trembled as she continued cleaning, trying to appear calm. "Pleasure to meet you, Mira," Yuki said smoothly. "New to Haven's Edge?" "Yes," Mira managed to say. "I see." Yuki accepted her coffee from Jai and took a sip. "You know, I was reviewing some reports this morning. Interesting reading. Something about a ship that crashed during that big storm a few weeks back." Mira's heart hammered against her ribs. This was it. She would be arrested and Day would be taken away. She started to back toward the kitchen, ready to run, but Yuki simply smiled and continued talking to Jai about mundane colony business. Water system repairs, supply shipment schedules, plans for the upcoming harvest festival. She finished her coffee, paid, and headed toward the door. As she passed Mira, she paused and spoke quietly, just loud enough for Mira to hear. Sometimes crashed ships get reported to various authorities. Sometimes they don't. Depends on whether anyone thinks it's worth the paperwork. She met Mira's eyes directly. "I personally hate unnecessary paperwork." Then she was gone, leaving Mira staring after her in shock. "She knows," Mira whispered to Jai when they were alone. "Of course she knows," Jai said calmly, continuing to prepare sandwiches for the lunch crowd. "Yuki knows everything that happens on this colony. She's good at her job." "Then why didn't she arrest me?" Jai looked up from his work, genuine confusion on his face. "Why would she arrest you? You haven't hurt anyone. You're not causing trouble. You're just trying to take care of your son. But I'm here illegally. I stole a ship. I'm a fugitive. Are you planning to steal anything else?" "No, of course not. Are you going to hurt anyone?" "Never." "Then as far as Yuki's concerned, you're just another resident of Haven's Edge." Jai shrugged as if it was obvious. This colony was founded by people running from something. Half the original settlers were refugees, deserters, or folks who just wanted a fresh start somewhere nobody would ask questions. Mira sank into a chair, overwhelmed. "I don't understand how your people think." "It's not complicated," Jai said gently. "We believe everyone deserves a second chance. Everyone deserves a place to call home." Later that afternoon, Day burst through the cafe door with his usual energy, school bag bouncing on his shoulders. He had made friends quickly with the human children, who seemed fascinated by his stories of different worlds and didn't care at all about his mixed heritage. "Mama, guess what?" he announced excitedly. "Teacher Bay says I'm the best at math in the whole class. And Hoon invited me to his birthday party next week." Mira smiled at her son's enthusiasm. He was thriving here in ways she had never imagined possible. The constant fear and tension that had marked his early years were melting away, replaced by the carefree joy of a normal childhood. "That's wonderful, little star," she said, hugging him tight. "Can I help make the steamed milk today?" Day asked. Jai hopefully. "Only if you promise not to make it better than mine," Jai replied with mock seriousness. "I have a reputation to maintain." Day giggled and ran to wash his hands. Watching him work alongside Jai, chattering about his day at school, Mira felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the cafe's heating system. The peace was shattered an hour later when two figures in gray uniforms entered the cafe. Hegemony scouts, their faces hidden behind reflective visors, their hands resting casually on weapon belts. Every customer in the cafe went silent. Mira grabbed Day and pulled him behind the counter, her heart racing. "We're looking for two fugitives," one of the scouts announced in a mechanical voice. "An adult female and a child. They crashed on this world approximately 3 weeks ago." Jai stepped forward calmly. "I haven't seen any crashed ships. Have you, Mrs. Chen?" The elderly woman shook her head. "Nothing like that around here, officer. Just us boring locals." "What about you?" the scout asked Taro, who was sitting at a corner table. "Crashed ship?" Taro scratched his head thoughtfully. "Oh, you mean that old freighter wreck out by Miller's Canyon? That thing's been there for years." The scout's visor turned toward him. "We have confirmed reports of a fresh crash site." "Well," said Dr. Lee from her table near the window, "there was that meteor shower last month, made quite a mess, left craters all over the northern sector. Could be that's what you're tracking." Other customers began chiming in with helpful suggestions. Maybe the scouts were looking for the abandoned mining camp, or the old research station that got hit by lightning, or the trader who landed last month with engine trouble and left his ship in the repair yard. Through it all, Mira crouched behind the counter with Day pressed against her side, amazed by what she was witnessing. Every single person in the cafe was lying smoothly and convincingly to protect them. Not because they owed Mira anything, but simply because it was the right thing to do. The scouts grew increasingly frustrated as their questions met with more unhelpful suggestions and false leads. Finally, they gave up and left, muttering about inefficient colonial record-keeping. After they were gone, the cafe slowly returned to normal conversation. Nobody made a big deal about what had just happened. Nobody asked Mira for thanks or explanations. They simply went back to their coffee and sandwiches as if protecting fugitives from government agents was just another Tuesday afternoon activity. "How?" Mira whispered to Mrs. Chen, who was sitting closest to the counter. The old woman smiled kindly. "Child, we've all been where you are, running from something, looking for somewhere safe to start over. This colony exists because people need second chances. But you could get in trouble for lying to them. Let them prove we were lying," Taro said with a grin. "Far as I know, we were all telling the truth about what we've seen. I really haven't seen any fresh crash sites. Have you, Jai?" "Nope," Jai said cheerfully. "Just the usual old wrecks and meteor damage." Day looked up at his mother with wide eyes. "Mama, are we really safe here?" Mira looked around the cafe at all these humans who had risked themselves to protect strangers, and for the first time in years, she could answer honestly. "Yes, little star. I think we really are." Outside, storm clouds were gathering again. But inside Jai's cafe, surrounded by people who had chosen to make them family, Mira finally understood what home felt like. Summer turned to autumn on Haven's Edge, and with it came a peace that Mira had never known. The cafe had become her second home, and she found herself looking forward to each day's work. She knew every regular customer by name now, remembered. How they liked their coffee and listened to their stories with genuine interest. Day had grown taller and stronger, his face losing the hollow look of chronic hunger. He raced through the cafe door each afternoon with school stories and new words he had learned. Today was no different, except for the large man who followed him inside. "Mama, this is Mr. Taro," Day announced proudly. "He teaches fighting at the community center." Taro was Jai's younger brother, though he looked nothing like the gentle cafe owner. Where Jai was slim and soft-spoken, Taro was broad-shouldered and moved with the careful balance of someone trained in combat. His arms bore old scars, and his eyes held the alert watchfulness of a soldier. "Your boy's been asking about self-defense? Classes," Taro said to Mira. "Thought I should meet his mother first." Mira felt a familiar spike of worry. "Is someone bothering him at school?" "No, nothing like that," Taro assured her quickly. "The other kids like him fine. But Day mentioned he's never learned to defend himself. Every child should know how to protect themselves and others." "Others?" Mira asked. Taro nodded seriously. "We teach our children that strength isn't for hurting people. It's for protecting those who can't protect themselves. That's the most important human value there is." Over the following weeks, Mira watched through the cafe window as Taro worked, with Day and a group of other children in the small park across the street. He taught them basic movements, how to fall safely and how to get away from danger. But more than that, he taught them about responsibility. "If you're strong, you help the weak," Mira heard him tell the children one afternoon. "If you're fast, you help the slow. If you're smart, you help those who don't understand. That's what makes us human." Day absorbed these lessons eagerly. He began walking with younger children to school, making sure they got there safely. When an older boy tried to take lunch money from a smaller student, Day stepped between them and calmly suggested they all share their food instead. The older boy, faced with Day's quiet confidence and the disapproving stares of other children, backed down. "He's becoming quite the little protector," Dr. Lee commented one evening as she watched Day help an elderly customer to her chair. "You should be proud." Mira was proud, but also amazed. On her homeworld, strength was used to dominate others. Here these humans taught their children that strength came with the duty to protect. It was such a simple idea, yet it seemed to shape everything about how they lived. As autumn deepened, Mira found herself spending more time with Jai after the cafe closed each evening. They would clean up together, talking about the day's events or sharing stories from their different worlds. Jai never pushed her for details about her past, but he listened when she chose to share them. "I still don't understand how you do it," she said one evening as they stacked chairs on tables. "How you can trust strangers so easily." "It's not about trust," Jai said thoughtfully. "It's about hope. We choose to believe that most people are good until they prove otherwise. Sometimes we're wrong, but usually we're right. And when you're wrong, then we deal with it together. No one faces problems alone here." Mira looked at him in the soft light from the kitchen, and something warm uncurled in her chest. When had his presence become such a comfort to her? When had his smile become the thing she looked forward to most each day? "Why did you help us that first night?" she asked quietly. "Really? You could have called the authorities. It would have been safer for you." Jai stopped what he was doing and turned to face her fully. "Because you were hurt and scared, and your little boy was hungry. That's all I needed to know. That's all. That's everything." He stepped closer, his voice gentle. "Mira, I don't care where you came from or what you're running from. I care about who you are now, and who you are is someone who would do anything to protect her child. Someone who works hard and treats people with kindness. Someone who makes my cafe feel more like home just by being in it." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Mira felt her heart beating faster, but for once, it wasn't from fear. "Jai," she began, but he held up a hand. "I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "I just wanted you to know how I feel, how much you and Day mean to me, to all of us." Before Mira could respond, the front door burst open and Day tumbled inside, followed by 3 other children from his class. "Uncle Jai," he called out, using the title that had naturally developed over the months. "Can we have hot chocolate? We've been practicing our forms in the park and we're freezing." "Course," Jai said, his moment of seriousness melting into warmth as he looked at the group of shivering children. "But only if you promise to drink it slowly this time. Last week Hoon burned his tongue because he was in such a hurry." As Jai bustled around making hot chocolate, Mira watched him interact with the children. He treated each one with the same patient kindness he showed Day, remembering their preferences and asking about their families. The other children clearly adored him, and he seemed to consider them all part of his extended family. "He's good with kids," said a voice behind her. Mira turned to see Mrs. Chen had entered the cafe, carrying a basket of what smelled like fresh pastries. "Yes, he is," Mira agreed. "He'd make a wonderful father," Mrs. Chen continued with the subtle directness that elderly humans seem to specialize in. "Some children are lucky enough to get 2 parents who love them. Others have to find family in unexpected places." She pressed the basket into Mira's hands and patted her arm gently before joining the group around the hot chocolate station. That night, after the other children had gone home and Day was asleep, Mira sat in the quiet cafe thinking about Mrs. Chen's words. She watched Jai moving around the kitchen, preparing for the next day, and tried to imagine what it would be like to build a real life here. For so long, she had focused only on survival, getting through each day, staying one step ahead of pursuit, keeping Day safe. She had never dared to think about happiness, about love, about the possibility of a future that held more than just fear and running. But here, surrounded by humans who had made kindness into an art form, she was beginning to believe that maybe her son deserved more than just survival. Maybe he deserved a real childhood, a real family, a real home, and maybe, just maybe, she deserved those things too. "Jai," she said softly. He looked up from his work, flour dusting his hands. "Yes? Thank you for everything. For giving us a life instead of just shelter." He smiled, and in that smile, Mira saw something that made her heart skip. Not just kindness or friendship, but the beginning of something deeper, something that felt like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. Outside, the first snow of winter was beginning to fall, but inside the cafe, surrounded by warmth and the promise of tomorrow, Mira finally felt ready to stop running and start living. The emergency meeting was called at dawn, when the cafe was still empty and quiet. Yuki arrived first, her face grim, followed by Dr. Lee, Taro, and several other community leaders. Mira knew immediately that something was very wrong. "Hegemony. Task force," Yuki said without preamble. 3 ships, full military complement. They'll be here by evening." Mira's coffee cup slipped from her nerveless fingers and shattered on the floor. "They found us." "Not exactly," Yuki said carefully. "They're conducting what they call a comprehensive search of all outer colonies, looking for various fugitives and criminals. Your names are on a very long list." "But they'll have better equipment this time," Taro added. "Genetic scanners, biometric readers, the kind of things that can identify people even if they change their appearance." Dr. Lee leaned forward. "There is one option. Marriage to a human. Citizen grants immediate legal protection under colonial law. Even the hegemony can't touch legal family members without starting a diplomatic incident." Mira stared at her. "You mean a fake marriage? Just for papers?" "It would have to be real," Yuki explained. "They'll check everything, full legal ceremony, proper documentation, witnesses, and once it's done, it's binding under both human and interstellar law." Silence fell over the group. Mira felt trapped between impossible choices. A fake marriage would be using someone, taking advantage of their kindness. But if she didn't do something, both she and Day would be taken. "I'll do it," Jai said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. He had been standing in the kitchen doorway, listening to the conversation with growing determination. "Jai, no," Mira said immediately. "I can't ask you to do that. Marriage is supposed to mean something." "It does mean something," Jai said, moving, to sit beside her. "It means family. It means protection. It means choosing to face life together instead of alone. But you barely know me. My real past, where I come from, why I'm running. What if I'm not who you think I am?" Jai took her hands gently. "I know you love your son more than your own life. I know you work hard and treat people with kindness. I know you make terrible coffee but amazing sandwiches. I know you hum when you're happy and get a little wrinkle between your eyebrows when you're worried." He smiled softly. "I know that when you laugh, it's the best sound in the world. That's enough for me." "Jai," Mira whispered, tears threatening to spill over. "I'm not asking you to love me back," he continued. "Not right away. But I'm asking you to let me protect you and Day, to give us a chance to build something real together, if you want to." Mira looked around the table at all these humans who had become her family. They were all willing to help, to risk themselves, for her safety. But Jai was offering something more. Not just protection, but partnership. Not just shelter, but home. "Are you sure?" she asked him. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." Before Mira could answer, the cafe door burst open and Day rushed in, still in his school clothes. "Mama, why is everyone here so early?" he asked, then noticed the tension in the room. "Is something wrong?" Mira knelt down to his level. "Little Star, remember how I told you that sometimes people have to make big decisions quickly?" Day nodded, solemnly. "The bad people who were chasing us might come back. But Jai has offered to marry me so that we can stay here legally, so that no one can make us leave. What do you think about that?" Day's face lit up like sunrise. "Really? Jai would be my papa? If you want him to be," Jai said, kneeling beside Mira. Day threw his arms around Jai's neck. "I want that more than anything. Can I call you Papa right now?" "You can call me whatever feels right," Jai said, hugging the boy tightly. Yuki cleared her throat. "If we're doing this, we need to move fast. I can have the paperwork ready in an hour. We'll need witnesses and someone to perform the ceremony." "I'm ordained," Dr. Lee said with a smile. "Colony doctors often are for emergencies, and I think this qualifies." "I'll handle the rings," Mrs. Chen announced from the doorway. Nobody had seen her come in, but she stood there beaming with a small jewelry box in her hands. "These were my grandmother's. Every marriage should start with something beautiful." The next few hours passed in a whirlwind of activity. Word spread through the community with impossible speed. And soon the cafe was filled with people bringing flowers, food, decorations, and good wishes. Someone had produced a white dress that fit Mira perfectly. Taro appeared with a formal jacket, for Jai that he claimed to have borrowed from a friend. As afternoon faded to evening, the cafe was transformed. Tables had been pushed aside to create an aisle decorated with local flowers. Soft music played from someone's portable speaker. The warm light of dozens of candles made everything glow like a fairy tale. Mira stood in the small back room, looking at herself in the mirror. The dress was simple but elegant, and Mrs. Chen had insisted on doing her hair. She looked like a real bride, not a desperate refugee entering a marriage of convenience. "Second thoughts?" Dr. Lee asked gently. 100 of them," Mira admitted. "But not about Jai, about whether I deserve this, whether I'm good enough for him." "Child," Mrs. Chen said firmly, "that man has been happier these past few months than I've seen him in years. You and Day brought life back to him. If anything, he's the lucky one." A soft knock interrupted them, The ships are on approach, Yuki called through the door. We need to do this now. Mira took a deep breath and opened the door. The cafe fell silent as she stepped out. Jai stood at the far end of the makeshift aisle, wearing his borrowed jacket and the biggest smile she had ever seen. Day stood beside him as best man, practically bouncing with excitement. Every seat was filled with the faces of people who had become her family. People who had chosen to protect her, to celebrate with her, to welcome her into their community completely. As she walked toward Jai, Mira realized that somewhere along the way, this had stopped being about legal protection. This was about love, about family, about choosing to build a life together with someone who saw the best in her even when she couldn't see it herself. The ceremony was simple and beautiful. Dr. Lee spoke about love, commitment, and the strength that comes from facing life together. When it came time for vows, Jai spoke first. I promise to protect you and Day with everything I have, to build a home where you always feel safe and loved, to be the family you deserve. Mira's voice shook as she replied, I promise to trust you with my heart, to build this life together, to love you and let you love me for as long as we both live. When Dr. Lee pronounced them married and Jai kissed her gently, the cafe erupted in cheers. Through the windows, they could see the lights of hegemony ships landing in the distance, but inside the cafe, surrounded by friends and family, Mira felt only joy. She was no longer a fugitive. She was Mrs. Mira Park, legal citizen of Havens Edge, with a husband who loved her and a community that would protect them all. The running was finally over. The hegemony officers arrived at the cafe just as the wedding cake was being served. They entered to find a room full of celebrating humans, music playing, and the sweet smell of Mrs. Chen's famous honey cake filling the air. We're looking for fugitives, the lead officer announced, his voice cutting through the festivities. Well, you found a wedding, Yuki said cheerfully, appearing at their side with a plate of cake. Care to join the celebration? The bride and groom just got married, an hour ago. The officer's scanner beeped as it picked up Mira's genetic signature across the room. He started toward her, but stopped when he saw her standing next to Jai, both of them wearing wedding rings and surrounded by smiling humans. Your identification, the officer demanded when he reached them. Mira handed over her new identity documents with steady hands. The papers showed her legal name as Mira Park, married human citizen with full colonial protection status. The officer examined the documents carefully, ran them through his scanner, and checked the biometric readings twice. Everything was perfectly legal and properly filed. This marriage, he said suspiciously. When did it take place? About an hour ago, Jai said proudly, his arm around Mira's waist. Want to see the pictures? We've got plenty of witnesses. The officer looked around at the room full of humans, all of whom were watching him with polite but unmistakably protective expressions. Dr. Lee stepped forward with the official marriage certificate, still warm from the printer. I performed the ceremony myself, she said helpfully. Everything's properly documented and filed with colonial authorities. The officer's jaw tightened with frustration. This is very convenient timing. Love doesn't wait for convenient timing, Mrs. Chen announced from across the room. That's what makes it love. A chorus of agreement rose from the wedding guests. The officer found himself surrounded by humans telling stories of their own sudden romances, whirlwind courtships, and spur-of-the-moment weddings. Each story was told with such genuine warmth and detail that it became impossible to doubt their sincerity. You're saying this marriage is real? The officer asked skeptically. Of course it's real, Day piped up indignantly. Jai's my papa now. Look, he taught me how to make steamed milk and everything. The boy demonstrated his milk-steaming skills with such obvious pride and affection that even the stern hegemony officer's expression softened slightly. After another 20 minutes of futile questioning, the officers finally gave up. They had found their targets. But those targets were now legally protected, human citizens surrounded by a community that would clearly fight any attempt to remove them. "This isn't over," the lead officer warned as they prepared to leave. "Yes, it is," Yuki said firmly. "These are human citizens under human protection. Any further harassment will be reported to the Interstellar Council as a violation of sovereign colonial rights." After the officers left, the celebration resumed with even more enthusiasm. The humans seemed to take great pleasure in having successfully protected one of their own from outside interference. As the evening wound down and guests began to head home, Mira found herself standing in the kitchen with Jai and Day cleaning up the remnants of their impromptu wedding feast. "So," Jai said carefully, "we're married now." "We are," Mira agreed, suddenly shy. "What happens next?" Mira looked around the cafe that had become her sanctuary, at the man who had become her husband, and at her son who was finally, truly safe. For the first time in years, the future stretched. Ahead of them, bright with possibility instead of dark with fear. "I guess we figure it out together," she said. "Like families do." 6 months later, the cafe had expanded. A small addition provided living space for the growing Park family, and the dining area had been enlarged to accommodate their increasing number of regular customers. Word had spread about the little cafe where everyone was welcome and no one was turned away hungry. Mira stood behind the counter, watching Day teach a new friend how to operate the steamed milk machine. Her son had grown tall and confident, his laughter ringing through the cafe as he worked. He wore the red belt he had earned in Taro's martial arts class and carried himself with the quiet pride of a child who knew he was loved and protected. "Order up," Jai called from the kitchen, sliding a plate of sandwiches across the pass-through window. Mira delivered the food to a table of newcomers, a human family who had arrived on the morning transport, looking tired and worried. She made sure their cups stayed full and their children had plenty to eat, remembering her own first day in this place. "Busy day," Dr. Lee observed, settling into her usual seat by the window. "The best kind," Mira replied, bringing her friend coffee without being asked. Through the window, she could see Yuki walking across the square with a group of people who looked like recent arrivals. More refugees, probably, or settlers looking for a fresh start. Haven's Edge had a reputation now as a place where people could rebuild their lives without judgment. "Mrs. Park," a small voice said at her elbow. Mira looked down to see Jin, one of Day's classmates, holding up an empty cup, hopefully. "More steamed milk, please?" the little girl asked sweetly. "Of course, sweetheart." As Mira worked the steamer, she reflected on how much had changed. Her hands no longer shook when strangers entered the cafe. She no longer jumped at unexpected sounds or constantly watched the door for threats. The fear that had been her constant companion for so many years had finally faded away. She was Mira Park now, not Mira the fugitive. She was a wife, a mother, a business owner, and a valued member of the community. She belonged somewhere, and more importantly, somewhere belonged to her. "Mama," Day called out, "can Hoon stay for dinner? His parents are working late at the clinic." "Of course he can," Mira said automatically. There was always room for one more at their table, just as there had always been room for them when they needed it most. That evening, after the cafe was closed and cleaned, the Park family sat down to dinner together. Jai talked about his plans to add new items to the menu. Day chattered about his school project on colonial history. Mira listened to their voices and felt the deep contentment of a person who had finally found home. Later, as she tucked Day into bed in his own room in their own home, he looked up at her with serious eyes. "Mama, do you ever miss the old days, when it was just you and me?" Mira considered the question carefully. "I miss some things," she said honestly. "I miss how close we were when we only had each other. But I don't miss being scared all the time. I don't miss being hungry or cold or wondering if we'd be safe tomorrow. I like having Papa, Day said sleepily, and Uncle Taro and Grandma Chen and all our friends. I like having them too, little star. Are we going to stay here forever? Mira smiled and kissed his forehead. Forever and ever. This is our home now. As she turned off the lights and headed to her own room, Mira paused in the hallway to look at the pictures that lined the walls. Wedding photos, school events, community celebrations, family dinners. The visual story of a life built on love instead of fear. She found Jai reading in bed, waiting for her as he did every night. He looked up as she entered and smiled the same warm smile that had first made her feel safe in this place. "Good day?" he asked. "The best," she replied, settling beside him. Outside their window, Haven's Edge slept peacefully under a blanket of stars. Somewhere out there, other refugees were probably running from other threats, hoping to find safety and acceptance. Maybe some of them would find their way here, to this little colony where humans had made kindness into an art form, and if they did, Mira knew they would be welcomed just as she had been, fed, protected, and given the chance to build new lives, among people who understood that everyone deserved a second chance at happiness. She drifted off to sleep in her husband's arms, in her own bed, in her own home, surrounded by the love of a community that had chosen to make her family. The girl who had fled across the stars, with nothing but her child and hope, had finally found what she was running toward all along, a place where love was stronger than law, where compassion conquered fear, and where the simple human act of offering steamed milk to a stranger could change everything. She was home.